Good evening. How are you? Well, it's nice out. I waited too long. I've been doing work all day, and but it's just splendid now. It's 77 degrees. We're going in that direction now. We have 55% humidity, according to Thomas Jefferson, and the wind's at 5 miles an hour. Although I don't feel it that quick here. So. What's going on? Well, today's a mixed blessing, I think. There are big stories, and some are disappointing. You've heard me say before, things like politicians will break your heart, and people will break your heart too. And it is why I've said before, why it was easy for Jack Kennedy to write a short book when he was talking about profiles in courage. In the history of the United States, there aren't enough such profiles. Last night, I was with a member of Congress who's terribly ill and who's working hard at it and going to make a difference until she can't. That is an example of a profile in courage. Now, for some, being a Republican or a Democrat is such a defining characteristic that they couldn't think of themselves as anything else. And so in an election, if they were upset with a person from their party, they would refrain from voting rather than crossing the aisle and voting for a Democrat, say. Now, in my own history, I've always thought of myself as a genetic Democrat, and there are times when you can vote in a different party's primary as a tactic to help choose the weakest opponent from that party. I've never done that. I mean, I've seen it happen, and it's a dangerous thing, because what happens is you think you've chosen the weakest and you've chosen the best. And anyhow, it's also dishonest, so I don't like doing it. And habits are formed by these things. So this is all prefaced to saying, we all know former Republican Dick Cheney, former vice president, advisor to Republican presidents, Republican his entire life. And his daughter, Liz Cheney, who before him was upset about the way Trump was running the party and so forth, and supported his impeachment and then worked on the January 6th committee. Well, today he has announced that he's voting for Kamala Harris. And that's a big deal for him. And what it does is it is an example, a leadership moment for others. Now, I'm not going to swoon about his other positions, but I do believe that we're better as a nation if when we wear a label as a partisan, we're also talking about substantive issues and working to get something done, even if they're compromises of things that are not so important to each party. He said something interesting when he said he was going to vote for Kamala, and it was that Trump can never be trusted with power again. That's a powerful statement from a man who knows government. And we've seen a lot of Republicans take this tack. And it reminds me of Nixon, when it seemed that the proportion of ethic behavior was greater, more accessible to the Republican Party when they were dealing with Nixon, Tricky Dick. And it's encouraging now that we see more Republicans talking about supporting the Democratic nominee. And I think that's significant and important and can help others understand that they should make that same choice. One of the salient points of his support for Kamala is his recoil from Trump's cowardice to say he won but the election was stolen when he knew it was a lie. And you would think that would matter to anybody because it's not a little lie, and it came with great cost in the failed coup that was incited to occur by Trump, who sat and watched it. And when he saw it was going to fail, he's basically telling everybody, run for the doors, get the hell out of here, or you're going to get caught. He didn't say it that way, but that's what he was thinking. I'm sending you a signal that this is not going to work, so get out of here. Now, so that's one side of the day, and I think that's encouraging, and I think it's fortunate. But we have a mixed day. We have Judge Juan Marchand, who has presided over Trump's trial in the city, and the prosecutor is Bragg. And in that courtroom, Trump was convicted of 34 felony counts. He could face a range, but the center of the range is more like 4 years. You could go below that, you could go above that. And until today, the sentencing was going to happen on September the 18th. And now it's not. The judge is going to refrain. He's going to delay Trump's sentencing until after the election. And he said it's because in a 4-page letter opinion, he said in that opinion that he did it because of the legal issues raised by Trump and also the procedural issue in which Trump is again trying to move the case to federal court and out of the state court. These are frivolous actions. We know they're frivolous actions. The judge knows these are frivolous actions. The prosecutor has sort of given the judge a pass saying, do whatever you want, but you might want to do this. There was a Texas politician that always talked about, you always find weak public servants in the middle of the road. You know, that's where the yellow line is. The DA said he'd go along with it. The judge is going to go along with it. And the final sentence, if I remember correctly, is the judge said he was doing this in the interests of justice. I don't buy that for a minute. Maybe he's stood in front of a mirror and convinced himself of that. But Trump, at every turn, has done everything he could to delay so that perhaps he could win the presidency again in some other scheme of his, and then erase all of this with his newfound power as the president-elect and president for a second time. So basically, you're consenting to being duped. Why? Because you are terrified of the history. You know, as kids, if we do sports, and running comes to mind, but I did a lot of swimming competitively. And what I did running was like anybody else, you know, these short multi-K runs. And but the question is, are you going to hold anything back because you're uncertain that you can do it? And the answer among the best athletes is no. You leave it all on the track. You do it all. So why is the judge, why is the prosecutor playing the bitch to Trump? Why? What is wrong with our leaders? Increasingly, we face the one path that luckily is still vital, and that path is through the ballot. Those ballots will start to be collected this month. In a few days, we're going to have what they call a debate between Trader Trump and Kamala Harris. I don't know what difference it will make. I don't know that she should do it or not. And there was a host and a commentator saying that Kamala should shake the hand of Trump at the debate. I would not. Is that small? I don't think so. Would I shake the hand of Hitler? Would I shake the hand of many politicians that I know? No, I would not. Have I refused to shake hands? Yes, I have in my life. Why not? Because it's a symbol. It's a symbol of acceptance of the person. And to not shake their hand is a comment in another way about that person. So there's a lot of cowardly advice on the Democratic side. You know, there's too much empathy and not enough warrior. I have been encouraged by Kamala and Tim showing fight. And the last thing in the world I want is people getting nervous and edgy at the corners and taking a step back from fighting. This fight is still on. There's encouraging news today in 6 congressional seats that they now become competitive and we could take them away from Republicans. That's what this is about. And what do we do with judges like this judge who doesn't have the balls to go forward, and the DA who's lost his junkyard dog attitude? What do we do with these people? Well, we look to change them. We have to look in America for people who at least will enforce the law, who will stand by what the founding fathers, all men, decided when they wrote the Constitution as the tools to protect us from people like Trump, frankly, and perhaps judges who lose the faith with the law. It's not acceptable. Now, another out-of-the-world thing that comes to my mind is the Boeing Starliner. It went up into space, and then they couldn't get it unlocked, so they couldn't get the astronauts back in the ship to come back to Earth. So what have they done? Well, they've managed to get it released, and the ship's coming back without the pilots. So, I don't know, Boeing's having a bad season, and I don't think taxpayer dollars should be going for people who can't get their shit together. So that's another thing that we have. In the category of incompetence or corruption, in Georgia, we have the election board has 3 people who've been identified and who've been changing the rules on that board just before the election. And some Democrats have said we have to change the rules back because this is too late to be doing something like that. And the governor, Republican governor, he was opposed to doing that. And then on top of it, the commission decided not to do anything about it. This is another challenge. We have a challenge in the contest itself. How are we going to fight? And the answer is, we got to show some spirit. That's what we have to do. And I had heard reports earlier that Putin was not helping Trump, but now there's others that say he is, and he's doing it through disinformation campaigns, and it wasn't further described. It's believable, but there it is. The objective that we have is for us to know the standards we apply and to demand that our leaders adhere to those standards. Not duck it, not say, oh, he was the president. What that judge is doing in the Trump prosecution is proving that one man is above the law, and many others in the business political class, they get treated differently. And we can't have that. And I think it's become more obvious to citizens and people of the world around us that this is true in America, which puts the lie to our no man is above the law, equal justice before the law, everybody has these special rights. It's all bullshit. It's not that there's none, but it is that there are too many exceptions for these people. And the system that applies to the rest of us, I think I should write about this, is flawed even without the double standard for those potentates that pose as Democrats who want to be monarchs or dictators in America. So, Kamala, don't shake Corleone's hand at the debate next week. We don't need that. This is a guy who said, I believe he said this today in connection with the Carroll case. He said that the picture, that was AI, artificial intelligence. I think they think we're artificial intelligence. They think we don't know that he only lies. And when he says something true, it's because it's an error in judgment and he concedes things he shouldn't be saying. Now, Judge Chutkan is in the same category. And people said she was so tough and she would do this, that, and the other thing. And she's kicking the can down the road as well, when delay was also the tactic there. So what is it about people when they have the power to stop these kinds of ruses to defeat a fair and just sentence after the man's been convicted? It's not tolerable. I had a case before Chutkan. It was a criminal case. I was new to the case, hadn't handled the trial, and I asked for extra time before the sentencing. And the judge said no. Then the prosecutor asked to delay the sentencing so she could go on a vacation. And the judge said yes. How does that work? Exactly the way you think it works. So, Judge Chutkan is a good judge. But Judge Chutkan has her faults. And in the case of my client, she should have been more impartial, to give us the time to make arguments that we should have been able to make, to review the material that had not been made available to us for weeks. And in the case of Trump, they know what they're going to say about these issues, about the Supreme Court's issue, about the indictment that supersedes with a view toward being able to prosecute Trump for what he's done, interfering in an election. So, I would say Trump has succeeded in interfering in this election by shutting down the prosecutions until after the election. So people won't know. In the case of the New York City case, whether or not Trump is sentenced to 4 years while he's trying to run for office, when at the end of the day, he, if elected, might be in custody the whole time. So those are a few of my thoughts today. Glad I could visit with you. Look forward to talking to you tomorrow from my Cathedral of Trees. All the best. Bye-bye.